Welcome to the CR Media Sports Creators Podcast. These episodes are mainly aimed at content creators and industry professionals who work within sports media or broadcast TV. If these are topics that you feel you may be interested in, please like, comment, subscribe for updates and notifications. Episode 1 is with Edris Toussaint from Beyond the Game TV. Edris has built his platform to just under 20,000 subscribers, and it focuses on documentaries, vlogs and tutorials around sports media. Edris also has over 10 years broadcast experience working with the likes of UFC, NHL and the NBA, so there's a lot of knowledge to come from Edris in this show. We'll be discussing the importance to stay creative and constantly coming up with new ideas. We'll also be talking about a growing trend of athletes starting their own YouTube platforms to grow their own brand. And we'll also talk about how to stand out in a very congested sports media industry. Also, feel free to check out my other channel, CR Media TV, or youtube.com/CR Media TV, which is all around MMA and boxing mini documentaries. It may be something that you're interested in, it may not be. If you're not, don't worry, enjoy the episode with Edris, but I will link that down below, so if you want to go over there and subscribe and enjoy that content, feel free to do so. Cheers. Good stuff. So if you want to give us a bit of an insight, obviously into yourself, your background, sort of your career, and a little bit about sort of like your channel, Beyond the Game TV.
Yeah, well, I'll try to make it short because it's been a while. Done a fair few things, but basically originally from Montreal, Canada. I was working in television and sort of got my experience mainly as a video editor, and then eventually got the chance to work for NHL club, the Montreal Canadiens. So at that point, for me, that was really the sort of the moment when I realized that I could actually do the job that I love about a topic that I love as well. It wasn't just doing the job that I love and just whatever they throw at me, I'll take. I can actually do something that I enjoy, and then it became the best of both worlds, where my hobbies and my career sort of became one, and then from there, eventually, well, I was working on all sorts of sporting events, but then eventually moved to Australia because I fell in love with an Australian, and in Australia, sort of try to continue the same thing, but obviously sports clubs are a lot smaller over here, so smaller budgets. So instead of working for a club, I started a business that is sort of an agency where I can do videos for various clubs, and been doing that since 2012. And through that, I was looking for a way to be more creative, do my own thing, and that's how Beyond the Game started in 2015. Beyond the Game TV is basically a place, it's mainly a YouTube channel, but we're also on Facebook, Instagram, all that. And it's basically a place for me to express myself with documentaries and vlogs and all sorts of videos that are all sports related. But also I have another side of it that's sport videography tutorials. So I explain how I do different things. I give tips and tricks and advice, and it's so far built quite a community of people that are getting more and more into sports videography, and it's very cool to see.
What was it then about sort of sports media initially, that or wanting to get into sports? Was that something that happened by chance, or was that something that you wanted to do? What was it about sports media that sort of attracted you to sort of that field?
To be honest, it was chance really, but I definitely love sports, and I always have. Like I play a lot of sports myself, but when I started, like obviously I started in the early 2000s, like I'm 40 now, so back then television was really the only option to make money out of video production, and so that and cinema. But so I was getting into TV, just being grateful for any work that would come my way. But then a friend of mine who had the job at the Montreal Canadiens, we went to school together, and he reached out to me because he had to leave that job because he was also in a band and he was going on tour. Asked me if I was keen to take on the job, and I was, obviously, because Montreal Canadiens is the equivalent of the Liverpool Football Club. Like for us, it's the Mecca. So I was super excited to get the chance, and I got the job, and that, like I said, then I realized that my hobby, my passions could also be my job, and it was fun as well to sort of see because before that, the TV shows that I would work on would be targeting a demographic that wasn't really me. Like a lot of it was like beauty products for women, for example, or things that had nothing to do with what I cared about. So it was hard to sort of gauge the reaction or the impact that my videos would have on people. Where when I'm doing it about sports, then all my friends are watching them and enjoying them, and I get much more of a reaction. And it was just fun to be a part of, especially when it's a big club like that, and that everyone around you cares about that product as much as you do. It makes it that much more exciting.
Is that sort of point you touched on there, is that important to you of making an impact? Because certainly for me, that is important. So like when I'm doing stuff for like my clients, I want to kind of know, that the actual subscriber base is growing, or the content is being consumed, or it's being engaged. Like, is it important that you kind of connect with the impact that it's making? Whereas, like as you said, when you're doing beauty stuff, you don't particularly understand like the demographic or what's going on. Is it important to be working for you in something that you understand and almost feel emotionally?
Well, I think it is, in the sense that, like, for me, it just brought on a whole new level of motivation, because if I truly understand the purpose of the video and I know what it can do, the impact that it's at the very least trying to achieve, then I can really try hard to get there and to get that impact, get that reaction from the crowd at particular moments, or get that message across that we're trying to tell the fans or whoever it is. So that made it that much more fun for me. Like, that made it the difference between a job and just me sort of doing what I love. Like, I remember when I moved to Australia, I had a couple jobs here and there that were just sort of whatever job I could get, in the meantime. And one of them was particularly brutal for me. I was just doing like tutorials about some sort of IT software, and anyway, it was just very, very boring. And I remember looking at my watch, just to see how much time I've got till the day's off. And I'd realized at 30 years old that I hadn't done that in like 10 years. Because working in sports, I'm always excited, and there's never enough time in the day to do what I want to do. And I'm really motivated to get the video where I think it can get, and all these things. And once you get that, it's hard to go back to just making a video just for the sake of making a video. So that's why I think it was really important for me to stay in sport and just stay within a topic that I really enjoy and I'm really passionate about.
Is there any moment sort of like within your career or within sort of what you're doing now with your channel that sort of like stand out, like particularly sort of stand out moments, whether it be sort of like working on a certain event or working with a certain athlete? Is there anything that sort of stands out sort of in that time as sort of special moments for yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I think, well, obviously for me, being from Montreal, working for the Montreal Canadiens was a big deal, being in the locker room with them. And especially one time I went to a special event where there was a curtain raiser game with all the old guys from when I was a kid. So that was really impressive to share, a locker room with guys that I used to idolize when I was 8, 9 years old. That was pretty impressive for me. But in my everyday life, I'm not the type of guy who's very I'm not a fan per se who asks for autograph, and I'm very much the opposite, actually. So there are like very few moments, and to me it was more as a group, like for example, Beyond the Game TV, the fact that it was just an idea that I had, and I thought, oh, this could go somewhere. And when we got to the point where I was hiring people, or when we're at a press conference and I hear Michael, my producer at the time, talking to Ronda Rousey, saying, "This is Michael from Beyond the Game TV," and they're talking, I'm like, this is crazy. Like, this was just an idea in my head, and now we're actually interacting with these people as Beyond the Game, and we're getting accredited, and we're part of these things. That's the biggest thing for me.
And it was some of your sort of like biggest inspirations within like the industry. Who do you kind of not like aspire to be, like who do you kind of look at and kind of think, take inspiration from, whether that be an athlete or somebody, other content creators?
Well, I really admire people who can be extremely creative and very very focused and determined to go above and beyond. Like if you're looking at sport, then for me the obvious picks would be like someone like Kobe Bryant, for example, because it's been talked a lot recently. Our focus and determine it would be to get better at his craft and things like that. So that's a character trait that I really admire. When it comes to video production per se, I love I love documentaries at large. Like I'm a big Netflix fan, but definitely 30 for 30 for me was a big thing when it started. Those ESPN documentaries, it's all sports related, but I loved how they would pick topics that would be sort of very particular, but make it like a story that can touch everyone. Like just because, like I've never been like a college football fan, for example, but I could watch a 2-hour documentary about this one guy who was great in college but never made it in the NFL. And I find these documentaries, especially because they're done by all different directors as well, so it's never exactly the same. So I still am a real big fan of that series, and I'm sure there's others that I can't think about right now, but yeah, I'm always looking at other creators for inspiration. And yeah,
I think one thing that probably I realised when I sort of first got, because as I say, I'm sort of like a sport fan first before sort of videography, so it's kind of that way around. But one thing I realised, because obviously I used to consume a lot of content from like IFL TV and all these sort of guys. One thing you realise is when you start doing it, how much work is involved. Like you just think, oh, it's a like an interview, and then it gets uploaded, and then it's jobs are good, and kind of like in theory it is, but there's still like so much work around actually these platforms, and how hard, you said like at the top of that answer of like how focused and dedicated like certain individuals are. But definitely the one thing to sort of succeed within this game is you have to have that trait. You've got to really be tenacious, because as I say, it's a lot harder when you're on the inside than what it looks like from the outside.
No, it's true. And I also like working in television. Like I met a lot of guys who were older than me when I was starting, that was sort of set in their ways, and also it was during a period where you would go from very expensive big productions to what it is today, where what used to be done by 6 people back then now is done by one guy and a gimbal and a USB key, and that's it. You know what I mean? So that transition made a lot of older guys very angry, because they were set in their ways. They were doing the same thing from Monday to Friday, and they were paid tons of money, and life was good. And what happened was that, adapt or die, basically. Like you have to sort of be always learning, always improving, always coming up with new ideas, always sort of pushing the boundary, and always also realize that, especially when I was still working for the Canadians, there was also a big show aspect to what I do, because we would have all the big, the Justin Timberlakes and whatnot that would come to Montreal, would go to that venue, and I would produce all the ads. So I realized that you needed to be young to do what I was doing. So at the back of my mind, it was always like, I gotta, if I'm not, in touch with what's going on and always pushing new ideas and stuff, there's a younger guy that's kind of come in and steal my job. So it was always sort of a motivation to always be upfront and not sort of be comfortable, basically.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you mentioned sort of your sort of age before, of kind of where you're at, and I think we're kind of, I'm sort of approaching 40 myself, and it's interesting how sort of at this age we kind of almost remember the old times, but we know what it's like before the internet. We also know what it's like with the internet. So it's almost like we've sort of come into it like having a good understanding of what was before and what is sort of going forward. I mean, what are your sort of opinions on where the industry is going? You say it's changed a hell of a lot, particularly in the last 10 years, definitely, just in terms of the way people consume the content. But in terms of the sort of the next 10 years, where do you see it going, and how do you sort of see it for small sort of channels and the sort of, the big players?
Well, I think for smaller channels, there's more opportunities than ever, and that's a great thing, because first of all, it forces the ones that are here right now to, like I said, just keep pushing the envelope, because you can't just do the same thing, because someone else will come and be better than you. It won't take as long as it used to take, but yeah, just this at the same time, in saying that, like there's more opportunities. You can have your own YouTube channel. You can get your sponsors. There's many ways that you can make money or not, depends on what you're after. But it's also difficult in the sense that even though the equipment is getting cheaper and you don't need as much to do like high productions, high quality productions, you still need to be doing something different, something relevant, something that's gonna set you apart from a growing sort of mass. So there's tons of opportunities, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, because I'm getting a lot of, like, on Beyond the Game TV, I'm getting a lot of questions from younger sort of fans who want to do similar things, and asking me questions. Like, for example, I got one yesterday that was like, where can I want to do like highlight videos for of football games, for example. Where can I find highlights of my favorite player or this player? And like, well, dude, you're gonna have to watch these games and find them yourself. Like, there's no magic website where you can just go and grab all these highlights. You either film them or you somehow find them somewhere. But if you do find them somewhere, you're gonna need the permission. Like, no one's gonna just give you that footage for free and let you make money off of them. Like, it doesn't work that way. So you can do it for fun. That's fine. But if you want to make a business out of it, then it's gonna be a lot of work. So yeah, I think opportunities for smaller channels are endless, but it is a lot of work. And when it comes to bigger channels, I think I don't know, that one's a bit tricky because there's a lot of money involved. Like, sports, I think, is sort of the last thing that people watch live. So there's, the ESPNs of this world are spending, tens of millions, if not billions of dollars to own these rights. So when it comes for other people to have any kind of access to sports, it becomes really difficult because they have to justify all the money that they pay. You can't you can't charge 10 million to ESPN and then let a guy like me have access to the same footage. So it's a bit of a tricky future, I'd say.
And what advice would you give? You mentioned sort of people sort of asking you for advice, but what would you sort of say to sort of other sort of freelance videographers or photographers kind of looking to come into the game and sort of get opportunities for themselves? What advice would you sort of recommend for those sort of looking to go about doing that?
Well, I think the greatest thing now is that it's so easy to start. Like, I don't want to be the old guy in the room, so back in my day, but it's just like, there was no way I could have a camera, like just a camera good enough to do what I'm doing today. Like, it's only when I got to sort of college that we could hire a camera out, and I could only have it for a certain amount of time and then return it. Where these days you can easily, even with your phone, sort of do much better things that I would do with that same camera. So there's easy access to equipment to do a cool job. So there's nothing stopping you from, like I've said to many kids before, like I've seen like a lot of 16-year-olds who do videos for their local football team or for the school, like the sports program, and they do all sorts of videos, and they're getting a lot of views because all the kids at that school are following them, and the access that they get is so much better than the access that they would get at a professional level. So they're doing these very cool videos where they're in the locker room, they're on the pitch, they're doing all these things, and they've got gimbals and they've got all these things. And like, that's the way to go. Just like go nuts with that when you're young and you're living at your parents, and you have, you don't have to worry about your expenses. Just obviously keep it within your budget, but just like get all the experience you can with your friends, with your school, with your local teams, and then build a portfolio, whether it's on YouTube or on Instagram. And then when it comes to building a career, but I think it's sort of a variety. Like even myself, I do a bit of stuff online, I do a bit of stuff for clients, and clients will vary between clubs and leagues and different things. Sometimes corporates, they're just like a sponsor of a sports team, so that's how we sort of get introduced. So it's, you can have the goal to work like for your favorite football club, but you could in the meantime do a bit of freelance and do a bit of online stuff, and that way you're sort of versatile and you got options basically.
Cool. And I want to talk a little bit about the actual athletes themselves and them kind of using whether it be video or content, to grow their own brand and their own profile. And this is definitely something that is on the rise. You see more and more people, whether they're sort of having a go at it, doing it, some doing it better than others, but sort of building their own profile, whether it be on YouTube. You're seeing more and more fighters have their own YouTube channel. Stephen Thompson is probably a good example of that, of what I see, the UFC guy, who's got his own channel, who does like tutorials, really not overly produced, but what's important is the content's good, it's informative, it's him talking about like doing different strikes and kicks and what you would do in this scenario. That seems to be a sort of a movement that's getting more momentum. I mean, what's sort of your opinion on fighters or athletes creating their own content, how they should go about doing that, really to sort of build their own profile? What's sort of your opinion on that?
Oh, I think they have to, in a way. Like if they want to build, well, especially if you're in an individual sport, you're trying to promote yourself as much as you can, and also trying to build yourself an income outside of your sport is sort of how you really can establish a proper income, a steady income. But I think even in you see it in the NBA all the time, like all the stars have their own channels and they're building their brand basically, and that's a smart thing to do, and that's a great way for you to not just be relevant for 5-10 years, however long your career goes, and then just go into you either become a commentator or you basically fall off the face of the earth. Like these days, if athletes start early building a brand, first of all, they're probably going to get better contracts because their name becomes more relevant for the public, and two, they can potentially get sponsors that have nothing to do with the sports that they're in, which is great, and three, then after their career they can just keep doing their online thing or wherever it is that they're putting these videos, and that way they've got a second career sort of already waiting for them, and for us it makes more jobs.
I feel at the minute like you've probably got a scenario where, like, so you see for example a Premier League footballer, like they're getting like £100,000 a week, and they're getting paid that guaranteed regardless where they play, whether they put anything on social media, regardless they kind of get it. So I sort of feel the motivation for them to do their own YouTube channel seems to be less. I really see the opportunity though for someone like MMA or a boxer where they're not guaranteed a pay packet, but they have big profiles. So yeah, I see that's where sort of the future is going, and using that example of Stephen Thompson before, I think that's sort of where that's headed.
Even the team sports, because the thing is, because there was a while there where sport clubs were doing videos online but had no idea how to monetize it. Like they knew they had to do it because social media was a thing, but they didn't know how to make money out of it. And now that they've reached a point where they're getting sponsors on board and they can actually make hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more, with these videos, then they get, the way they sell this to sponsors is to say, in this video, I guarantee you to have like an A-lister player in the video talking about your brand, blah, blah, blah. But then the players are getting to the point where they're like, well, because that money is not going to them, it's going to the club. So why would I agree to do these things where I can just build my own brand, get the sponsors to me, and I'm going to get that money? And especially when you're in a day and age where players are changing clubs quite often, it's in the end, it's another revenue stream for them, and it's a good way to make sure that they don't, a couple of years after retirement, they don't run out of money.
There's another good example of it. There's a guy called Dave Allen, who is a British fighter. He's actually fought Lucas Brown, who is an Australian guy, quite recently, and beat him about a year ago. But realistically, Dave Allen is probably a British level fighter, or maybe even a European level, but he's not world level. I kind of know Dave. He's a nice guy, but the point I'm sort of getting at is he's been on 9 pay-per-view shows. And the reason he's been on 9 pay-per-view shows is because he's got he's almost got like a cult following. So regardless of what show he's on, people will buy tickets, people will come to the shows. But he's not really done it through like YouTube. He's just done it, I suppose, mainly through like just being a good character, giving interviews to IFL through his own Instagram, through his own Twitter. But the point is, he's getting all these paydays. He's probably getting 9 or 10 paydays more than other world champ. There's world champion boxers out there which are definitely not getting the opportunities that he's getting, and I find that remarkable.
Smart.
And I suppose the extreme example of this is KSI and Logan Paul. These guys, the YouTuber guys. That's almost like an extreme example, isn't it? Where you've sort of got these guys who've built the profile, going into a boxing fight, making more money than most boxers will ever do in a lifetime. And yeah, that's almost, to me, seems like it's the new model going forward. And whether down the line, sort of these guys start like bypassing promoters, I don't know. I think that's an interesting concept. I think two MMA guys bypassing Dana White and just having a show themselves. It's possible.
Yeah, well, that's I think that's the dilemma of the UFC, where at the moment there's that fine line between, do we want these two guys to fight just because they're sort of superstars, like outside of the ring, or do we actually want them to fight because they're the two best guys and they can? It's a bit of a there's a lot of pressure on fighters to sort of be exciting outside of the octagon and promote themselves, and even in the octagon there's sort of pressure to be exciting, not just if you're a wrestler, it's a lot of pressure on you to stand up and fight, because if all you're doing is being on your back and doing some trying to choke the other guy out, for the casual fan that's pretty boring. So it's but what do you do if that's what you're good at? You have to be really good at it, basically.
For sure. So I just want to finish off just talking about some of the challenges that you've sort of faced over the years within sports, like videography, and we've sort of talked about some of the cool things so far, but some things that can kind of go wrong, or some sort of setbacks that you've had down the years that like people could learn from or people could be aware of.
It's a good question, actually. I don't know if I've got like a particular thing that I can come up with, but I don't know. It's like, for me, it's just it's more about dealing with motivation and not let yourself being discouraged if you're not getting I'm filming at UFC events now. I've been rejected many times before I actually got in, and there's a lot of things that I've done that then you think, all right, I'm in, and then next thing you know, it doesn't happen anymore for a year or two. But like, it's just keeping that mindset that it's all about, it's what people call luck. Like I'm sure you've heard that saying before. Like, it's just luck is just basically opportunity meets preparation. So I'm always trying to be prepared for whatever opportunity is thrown at me, and whatever it is, I'll never say no. Like, I'll always say yes, even if I have no idea what I'm doing. And then as soon as that phone call's over, I'll be on Google, I'll be on YouTube, and I'll figure out how to do it. I'll never say no. And yeah, it's all about being ready. So there's probably some opportunities that slip through my fingers, like somehow, and I'm probably, I talk a lot on camera, but I'm probably not probably. I'm definitely an introvert, so I don't go to like networking events. I'm not the guy who's friends with everyone. Who's like, when I meet athletes, like I said, I'm not like a fanboy, so I don't sort of push that. I'm not trying to make them my friends so I can get the number and build that relationship, which someone in my position should definitely do a lot more. So that's probably
saying that though. I think, sorry to cut across you, but saying that, I think a lot of athletes would probably appreciate that too. The fact that you're not pushy or in their face.
Yeah, that's true. But because like, if I saw them every week, I think that'd be fine. But because I rarely see them, I should probably make the most of those opportunities. You know what I mean? Not necessarily like force myself to like, please, will you be my friend, or please take my business card or whatever. But just make more of an effort to be remembered and to build like a rapport, or even just with local guys that I do have access to, like trying to build more of a relationship where I'm more of a, I'm in my little, I'm in my studio, I do my own thing, and I come out once in a while, and and I'm in and I'm out. Like I don't really mingle that much. I don't know if I'm getting more and more, agoraphobic or something, but I don't know. I just, yeah, and it's definitely definitely like one of my, like the negative side of my personality for what I'm doing. Like I should be chasing sort of opportunities a lot more, which is probably why I try to make up for it with basically doing what I do best. So it's just being really good at what I do, so that when I do get the opportunity to meet, to work with whether it's a club or an athlete, whatever the case may be, I'll impress them with my work, and that's how they remember me, and that's how they'll want to work with me again. That's sort of how I approach it, and that's how I got clients as well when I started my business. It wasn't because I'm not a salesman at heart. I'm not the guy who's going to come into a pitch meeting and just like blow you away. The way I'll blow you away is just by pressing the play button and, you know, show you my show reel, and you'll go like, all right, yeah, I want to do that. And then I don't really have to say much other than to be a nice guy, and everything will take care of itself. So
yeah, no, cool. I know you obviously said about the sort of learning aspect of you always feel like.
Sorry, just realized my computer wasn't plugged in and was about to die, so just turn the PowerPoint on. We're good.
Yeah, just about like the constant process of learning and almost like getting opportunities and then, you know, Googling it and figuring it out. Like, is that a process in your experience that kind of doesn't ever end? And you mentioned before about almost like staying young within the game, staying fresh within the game, but in terms of a learning process, because I know exactly what you mean by that. You know, you get an opportunity and, you know, here's the camera that you're going to be operating. You've never used that camera in your life. You know, I'm Googling it, you're going to the rental shop trying to hire it to figure it out. Is that sort of like a process that you feel like never really ends?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think like you said, you get used to a certain type of camera or certain models, and you get comfortable, but then that camera has its limitation, and then you see a new one that can do the things that you'd really want to do, so you have to learn that one. And the same goes with editing, with any type of creative sort of work, really. Like I've always, not always, but, you know, I've been good at video editing for a while, but was never good at graphics, was never good at many things that come around it. And it's like, am I gonna pay someone thousands of dollars every time I need a graphic done, or am I gonna spend, you know, the hours needed to learn how to do it, and then therefore I can do it myself? And especially when you're starting something like Beyond the Game TV, where, you know, it's a bootstrap sort of low budget thing that you're funding yourself. There's so much money that you can spend on resources and people and freelance and things like that. So I keep learning. I keep trying to be able to do more and more of a high production level with a low production budget, basically. But even as a just random freelance videographer, like, you have to always sort of upskill and learn, not necessarily learn new things, but just like, because the good thing is that all these, whether it's the software or the hardware, they made easier and easier for us to use. Like they're more and more user friendly, but you still need to know your basics. And the good thing is, once you know the basic, they all sort of work relatively the same. Like the menu will be a bit different, but once you understand on the camera, for example, if you understand what ISO is, what shutter speed is, what, you know, these things, they're the same on every camera. So it's just about learning the basics, and then after that, it's just creative ideas, techniques, things like that. And it's actually exciting because it takes you out of the rut of doing everything the same way, and learning a new way of doing things, then open up a whole new, you know, new concepts, new ideas, and then it gets you sort of more excited about what you're doing, and you're never just sort of going on Monday knowing exactly what you're going to be doing that day. Like, you're actually excited about, all right, this week I'm going to try that new thing that I learned watching YouTube or whatever, and then gets you a bit more, you know, excited to go to work in a way. And to me, that's important. Like, I wouldn't be happy going to work sort of doing the same thing every day.
Cool. Well, listen, Edris, it's been brilliant speaking to you, and thanks for jumping on the call today. Thanks for sharing your insight, and yeah, it's been awesome.